Hello, everyone. My name is Tina Schomburg. As many of you know, I help run the Live It Up Social Foundation with my dear friend and soul sister, Lily. And as part of our community, we're always super excited to create and promote events to help you uplift and heal your body, mind, and spirit, which brings me to my conversation today with Joseph Maldonado. Hi, Joseph.
Hello, Tina. I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for your invitation.
Of course. I feel incredibly privileged to have met you, Joseph, and have been working with you one on one and in group sessions for about 8 months now. It's been one of the most transformational experiences in my life. So I'm super excited to share your essence with the rest of our community. So the intention today is for everyone to get to know Joseph a little bit better, and as a teacher, as a mentor, as a guide, and then we'll also be speaking on an upcoming seminar that Joseph is facilitating here in Vancouver from April 20th to the 22nd. So we won't jump ahead. I want to start off first by asking Joseph to share a little bit about his own journey, where he's come from, and how he got to where he is now as an amazing teacher, mentor, and guide. Joseph?
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. And I'm grateful that, you've gotten something out of what we've been doing for the last several months here with group, because I do believe the group is the most powerful way of shifting and changing it, because we do it together and we lift and change each other and we refract each other and we become larger as we change, as we exchange ourselves and our experiences, we change and we become larger than we were. Whereas on a one-on-one, it's more intense and more deep and more delving and able to pull out more, but not as expansive. And they both are useful, but I lean towards group. I think it's just an amazing, powerful way of doing things, and nothing like sharing your process with another. Now, to speak of that and to explain my journey or process, I like to first say we don't always get where we wind up in a logical fashion, and sometimes it's just a leap that occurs. And I've had leaps in my life that I can't explain possibly to you on how I got there, but I can explain some of the things I've done to at least set me up for that kind of leap of transcendent experience that has given me a greater ability and greater insight to share with others. Um, it's funny, we were talking right before we started, and you were speaking of maybe me sharing my experiences, and it just instantly popped into my mind. I remember as a teen going, God, I haven't experienced anything. I want to experience so much, and I'm going to do so much. And, what can I possibly, share with anyone? And seemingly overnight, I have more experiences than I know how to talk about or explain. It just happens when you are living and you're in the moment and you're in the now. The depth of increases, and the amount of experiences in a shorter time increases. And I've been blessed with those experiences and to have that opportunity to experience life that way. That being said, I always had a curiosity for self-awareness, self-knowledge. I was always a highly curious, nocturnal child. I remember looking out of the window facing the New York Bronx Zoo. As a child, we lived across the street from the zoo for about 8 years, from about the age of 8 till about 13 or 7. And I remember now looking back, understanding that I used to just look out the window at night and meditate. But again, it's natural for a child to do these type of things. And I will look out, I think it's the third largest zoo in the US. And I would look out and just be with the sounds and the noises. I would be with the nuances of it changing from daytime to nighttime. And how the world changed from daytime to nighttime. How the sound shifted, how suddenly I was hearing the animals differently that I was so accustomed to listening to. Made me so much more self-aware because of the amount of awareness I had to have in my environment. in a place that was, basically a ghetto at the time. But yet, I had the good fortune of being right across the street, top story apartment, 5th floor, looking out into this landscape of a zoo. And so I got to experience at night nature in a way that a city kid never really gets to experience. I think that had a lot to do with keeping me curious and keeping me always looking and wanting to know more. And so anytime my mother punished me, I was very happy because I'd be able to go into my room and open the window and look out and feel like I was out in the world more than in my house. So she used to complain that she could never punish me, right? It never seemed to work. And shortly after, within that same time period, my godmother came into my life, and I was blessed with a woman who was highly educated, highly intelligent, and incredibly aware. A woman way ahead of her time, who mentored me from about the age of 14. I started around 8, but it kicked into about 14 till she passed away a year ago, sorry. We're almost a year to the date. And I was blessed with this woman who took psychology to a whole nother level in education. And so she allowed me to ask and be as curious as I wanted to. Anything, any question, any way of looking at things. She gave me that stage and that opening and the feedback, love, and intelligence back to me that gave me the foundation that allowed me to fly at these different stages in my life. So, to speak of my journey, I can't speak of it without, putting her central with her mystical, magical ways. And I was incredibly blessed to have her. Now, from that point forward, I dabbled in all kinds of things, anything that's going to help me understand myself and life and all its mysteries. Now, back when I was doing this, it was the 70s. I was a teenager in New York in the 70s, and this type of work was considered like the occult. It was considered this close to Satanism and black magic. It had a kind of opinion, an idea of just something mysterious, dark, and I don't want to say New Age because it hadn't reached that stage yet where it was considered higher-minded, but actually something that was almost respected and found sacred and taken a little bit easier. And it wasn't all about how you can manipulate it, but it was always with the understanding that we're always dealing with forces much larger and greater than ourselves. And so that's where I went forward from that position, wanting to understand that which is greater than me, not that which I can take and make myself greater than you. The best distinction I heard was years ago from writer and teacher Ram Dass, when he was this Jewish upper middle class professor, former professor of Harvard, who found mysticism in India. And he came back to visit his brother in Massachusetts, who I guess found a certain amount of awakeness himself and realized the bondage of money. So he wound up stripping naked with naked women dancing around him, and he started burning money. And apparently he was at a hotel or something, and they called the police and broke in and put him in a mental hospital for burning money, because to them that was insane. So he goes and visits his brother. Again, he's this Jewish middle-class man who shows up in a long white robe and a long beard, looking very Middle Eastern, walks into his brother's room in the outfit, and his brother said, "I can't believe how you're walking around. Look at you." He says, "You're dressed like that, and you're out free, and I'm just, your average American here, and I'm in here locked up." And he said to his brother rather clearly and precisely, and honestly, he says, "Well, the difference is you think you're God, and I'm not. And I think you're God, and so am I." And so that's the way I look at how this kind of work was and what it's become and how it's viewed. I like to talk. I like to look at it in lines of how we consider monks and what would a monk be in the 21st century. And so I like to play with the concept and idea of being a 21st century monk, that person who still understands the sacred and the esoteric and the mysterious and the largeness of what we delve into when we dwell and delve into ourselves and what we're uncovering. That's always more, rather than what can I do with this to satisfy my egocentric ways and my need for power and attention. And to bring it into a mix where we can respect it again in that fashion, but still make it useful and applicable today. And so some of these very basic concepts that I understood from the past that are now kind of disappeared, I try to bring up again in my seminars. And I try to give a different perspective of certain concepts that we brush over that are very vital to understanding ourselves in this mysterious thing called life. Now, some of my background inside of that has allowed me to do seminars and so on. I taught at New York University for 4 years, communications, interpersonal communications, and speech communications, and all around interpersonal communications. So I took that approach for a while to apply spiritual concepts to something quite practical and tangible as the discipline of communications. Again, my mentor was a psychologist, so she taught me for several decades everything she knew. So I've been able to combine and amalgamate a bunch of different disciplines and ways that allow me to experience and approach things in a way that I can see clearly it's kind of unique compared to what I see everyone else doing. So when people stop and ask me, am I a life coach, or am I a spiritual teacher or communication? Yes. Yes and no. There's so much more because of the multiple and diverse experience I've been able to have that I can bring and able to apply to what I am able to share. I don't see it so much as teaching people, but helping them see what's already there, or maybe reminding them of what they, have always known but haven't gotten in touch with. So I'm not sure there's anything else you'd like me to add to that.
No, and I can personally attest to that too. I think what makes you a very effective teacher is that you have a very vast amount of experience, but not just vast, it also goes very deep. I've been privy to different conversations where I understand some of your personal background too and the challenges that you've personally overcome. So I just want to, for me personally, it's incredibly important to find mentors and teachers that speak from and that teach from experience. And I just want to emphasize that here, that you, Joseph, definitely bring that to the table. And Joseph, how long have you been teaching seminars and doing the one-on-one work as well?
Well, I used to do business seminars back in the early 90s, and then around the year 2000 I started doing more one-on-one with people and doing more personal development seminars after that. I just decided I want to get out of the business paid well, but the love that I had was more for working with groups in pursuit of self-understanding and self-development. So I kind of stuck with that instead. And I enjoyed speaking and working with large numbers of people, so the more the merrier. And being able to teach through the early 90s into mid 90s on a university level really lent to that energy and the excitement that comes from having a live now experience with a group. That fed it. So really from the year 2000 on, the seminars of this level really kicked in, and I started creating, I have 13 or 14 of them now. The one coming up now, Darkness, is one I created about 10 years ago. I've done it once or twice. So here's an opportunity to do it again, and it won't look like the first or second one, because as I change and evolve and explore and discover, it automatically gets added on, so it continues to grow in its own dimension. So I like that. It's like a growing work of art, these seminars. The same way an old mentor of mine described Central Park. It was a human-made park designed and created by our landscape architecture, with the idea that as it grew in time, it was going to keep changing and growing, and yet it was still a work of art. So I see these seminars as that, just these growing works of art. So this is why I get a lot of people redoing the seminars, because they know they're going to get something new and different. So that's very exciting. But you know, since the early 2000s, about 18 years now of doing the seminars and the one-on-ones. Prior to that, it was primarily business.
Okay. So let's talk about the upcoming seminar on darkness. Why darkness? I'm sure that everyone has their own definition of what darkness means. So maybe you can get a little bit of a glimpse into what the seminar's intention is for the group.
Absolutely. Well, without giving it too many spoiler alerts, what you said is precisely the case. So many people have very distorted perceptions of what darkness is. Now, if I go back to how I started in this conversation, it was in the dark of night, as I looked out the window into the darkness of this zoo, that I found great peace and great solace, great support, great expansiveness, and a deep sense of womb-like, love-like experience. So I was never really afraid of the dark because of it. Now, it all depends on what prototypes of life it's shown to you and what you think dark is. And we will explore that in the seminar. What is dark versus, you know, and it's truly, is it in the dark where we keep our shit? Or is it somewhere else? So we explore that. And what's important for me in our seminars is that it's interactive, real time. We do what's called labs, which is kind of meditative type exploration that are usually pre-planned. I have them set, I've made them up in the past, but sometimes they're created in the moment depending on the group and the dynamics. So it can be very spontaneous, where I'll create a lab that allows one to have the experience rather than just the intellectual experience, have intellectual knowing, have the actual understanding to experience through, you know, these kind of labs and these presentations and these lessons. But the key is to have a first-hand experience of what darkness truly is, what it's always been meant to be, and why it's important to know the distinction between what true darkness is and where all our crap is. Right? Obviously, I'm implying they're not in the same place, especially in a day and age where so much interesting shit is, you know, up and around for us to see. I mean, presently I'm in the States, so to me, one of the main reasons I didn't mind, because there was a choice between two seminars, I didn't mind doing this one, is because of Donald Trump. I mean, you know, there's so much that is there that explains where all the true shit is, that we lay on darkness. And so we're losing a powerful vehicle and tool to support ourselves through these moments of differences that we're having with what this man represents on both sides. And not to take sides, but to speak on this very illusionary kind of reality show we're living in now. And how do we distinguish between the illusions that are going on right now and the truth and the lies? And where can we go inside or outside of ourselves to find clarity? Most people listening to this presume clarity comes from light. And I'd like to give you an experience where you've second-guessed that maybe it's not the only place we can get clarity from. So I think it's an appropriate time with everything that's going on. So, like I said, the last time this was happening, there wasn't anything major like that going on in the world, and now there is. So it'll help those with that slight perception change to view what's going on now with a bit greater sense of power and greater sense of ability to affect, because that's what we want to do now. We want to affect some of the stuff that's going on. Some of these old systems that are very frustrated or very reluctant way giving up power. It will change. It is changing, but it's reluctant and it's slow. but we can find some clarity to help this process happen better and more powerfully. And so there's two fundamentals in life, light and dark. We need to understand both. And why are they dualistically viewed as opposites? We don't see as time and space as opposite. Those are the other two powerful points of life. So this is more than worth it to take a whole weekend and just take a look at one of these things, and hence the Darkness Seminar. And it's the name of the seminar in whole is actually Hello Darkness, My Old Friend.
It's funny because when the survey was going out in terms of which seminar we would like you to bring to Vancouver, I took the survey too, and I saw darkness, and I'm like, nope. There's definitely, that reluctance and that resistance to going into darkness, simply because, the understanding that I've acquired over the years of conditioning and taking on other people's beliefs of what darkness means. And I do put darkness and death almost in the same category. And as a society and as individuals, I personally see a lot of us kind of doing a little bit of this, when in reality, the darkness is really a really fertile ground for growth and for transformation and for empowerment. So despite my initial reaction, I'm super delighted that was what the majority chose. So I feel like there's an indicator that we're ready to step into that.
I mean, again, you just made the point there. What would you say one of your greatest fears are, or your greatest fear, or someone else's greatest fear? What would you say it is?
Death.
Death. All right? There's not going to be a person out there that, in fact, their greatest fear is not death. And so we link death and darkness. And if we understood darkness, we'd understand death. And if we could understand death, we'd be at peace with it. If we can be at peace with it, then we can truly live. And so this is what this seminar explores and tries to expose and show. So at best, it would definitely give you a different perspective of death, a necessary different perspective of death, because death and darkness are in fact hand in hand. And like I said, my beginnings are very different than if I just started studying this work in the 90s or the 2000s, because back then it was all mysterious and death and scary. If you studied spirituality or different religions or astrology and numerology and all that subject matter was always very scary to people, and they associated with darkness. So for me, it's kind of funny. I started from it being seen that way. Not when the New Age period began, where it was all about light and clarity and love, and it was defined that way. Suddenly the coin was flipped. So I got to experience the all of it, and we lost something by forgetting about the dark, sacred death aspect of it. To incorporate, to include. There's not, the example I always give to people is, look around and tell me what you see. And people will start pointing things out that they see. And I'll say to them, do you know that you would not be able to see any of that without dark? Without shadows? Art students take courses in shadowing, right? It's the dark 50-50 with the light that allows us to see what is, and the dark is always here 50-50. So it's a really obvious and necessary, to me, foundationary kind of course that one can take to get a great understanding and give oneself more peace and ease to look at their difficult aspects of themselves, and not be so afraid, not lose their shit over what they see that they might call dark, and to give you another way of being a little bit more accepting of it, so you can begin to make changes and adjustments. But it's the shying away of nothing dark. Well, that's half the world, and you are pushing away. It's half a life you're saying no to. And there is no life without death. Just like there are no birthdays if there were no death. Nobody celebrates birthdays because they're going to live forever. Right? So Just to reiterate, I truly believe it's a very important pillar type of course for anyone that's doing any kind of self-work. Yeah.
Yes, I would echo that. And I want to touch on one thing. You said that death is, in fact, not the number one fear of people. And I think I know the answer. What is it?
Go ahead.
Is it public speaking?
Well, they say it's public speaking, but it brings on the same feelings of death. So, in fact, it is death in different variations.
I gotcha. Well, the reason why I'm bringing this up.
And I taught public speaking for 4 years.
We're in good hands then, people. The reason why I want to bring that up is because it is a group seminar, and participation is obviously encouraged, and you will get more out of it if you participate. That's why you're there. But I do feel, in our community too, a lot of a big subject that keeps coming up and a big fear is self-expression. And so I want to invite people to use this seminar also as a tool in order to tap into that power of cultivating some of that expression. Can you speak to that? Do you see that in your seminars?
Well, coincidentally, the last seminar I did was the self-expression seminar. And, there's nothing more powerful than the pursuit. Oprah likes to talk about it as a number one goal you should have, which is, express the highest part of who you are, which I agree, but also want to add that there is no other real reason to be here than to express yourself. And if you're not open to all parts of yourself, how could you truly express yourself fully? And so I decided, let me target the part we resist, repress, run from the most. Because most of the time it's not as bad as we think. I like to tell people in my communication seminar that, I will call them out if they're, stuck or not fully expressing or being clear, because I'll call them out on their shit. But then I define the different kinds of shit. I explain to them how there's bird shit, which is not a big deal, it kind of gets on your car, it's a pain in the ass, you clean it off, but it's not as bad, you can deal with bird shit. And then there's dog shit, which is a bit more difficult, especially if you get it on your shoe and there's no grass around and you got to scrape it on. It's a pain, it's a pain in the ass, but it's not so bad. So I might let you get away with some bird shit and dog shit. But when I hear bullshit, well, that's too much. It's too big, too much. And we'll take a look at it and we'll expose it, because it's the bullshit that we really need to get clear with and to be present to, and to not let get in the way of our self-seeing. And so whether the bullshit is towards another or towards ourselves, anything that hinders our ability to see it, to understand why we use it. I'm not even speaking in terms of judgment, I'm talking in terms of difficulty of managing. When you're dealing with bullshit, whether you have to receive it or give it. The more equipped you are with understanding more of what life's about, the easier it is to manage those type of things in yourself or in others, and the ability to ultimately get to some kind of acceptance. So all of these things hinder self-expression. Right? This is what we're here for. We're here to self-express and express different parts of who we are becoming. From grade 1 to grade 6, I became a 6th grader. And then I was going to become a 9th grader. And then I was going to become a graduate. And I was going to become, and there's different things that I became as I lived life and on the accomplished levels. I also became a drug user and a thief, and I became other things too. And because I just looked at it all, I was able to decrease my judgment and see that even inside, when I express these parts of myself that were more destructive rather than constructive, I still learned a great deal. In some of my destructive periods, I learned great discipline. Right? So this is the ability to just use all of this grist for the mill. And so I don't differentiate to separate, to make right and wrong. I differentiate so we can see what we have to work with, and we use it at different times. These different tools are different ways of seeing, right? These are all vehicles of different ways of seeing. So then we can express that much more of ourselves. So this is all for self-expression at the end of the day. That will be, one of your two greatest regrets if you leave this world too soon and feel like you repressed yourself because you were afraid what was thought of you, or you were too scared or unsafe. And that would be not expressing and not loving. And they go hand in hand. So coincidentally, it was the previous seminar. So, maybe we'll cut pieces out and I can use that the next time we're doing a self-expression seminar.
Perfect. I do want to just reiterate, though, the group sessions that I've been doing with Joseph and the I Am community for the past 8 months. As a writer, as a daughter, as a friend, as a lover, I've just become so much more self-expressed as I allowed myself to go into some of these really difficult conversations which we're having week to week, and feeling exposed and that whole fear with it. That's what I mean by transformational. It's been going into those corners, the dark corners that I've been wanting to turn and have turned a blind eye to. And these days, self-love is all the rage in the world. And I'm laughing a little bit because I feel even the subject of self-love is incredibly distorted, where it stays, make yourself a cup of tea and have a bath and, accept compliments. But for me personally, self-love has been to go into the darkness and to learn to accept the things that I thought make me incredibly unlovable and undeserving in this world. So
that's, perfectly said. You would say the same thing about a relationship. If you can't accept each other's yucky stuff and naughty stuff in a relationship, how are you going, to progress in that relationship? Now, if you can't accept it in yourself, you're not going to be able to accept it in another fully. And if you are going to indulge in it, it's going to be more from a fetishized place. It's going to be from a deviation because of all the repression in yourself. Right? So a lot of, this stuff doesn't disappear. It's like, I say in my book, it's like a garden hose. Put your hand on it, this easily flowing water, if you put your hand on it, it gets deviated in all different kinds of directions. So all this shit you're pressing down and repressing in yourself and not expressing, good, bad, what have you, whatever way you evaluate it, if it's repressed, it's going to come out in a deviated fashion, or, you'll become a deviant. You might be a sexual deviant. You might be a financial deviant, a deviant in your friendships, a deviant in how you handle money or politics or what have you, in government. It comes in all different ways. And so this is all about being able to use clarity and allow things to come forth rather than be pressed. To be able to experience being pulled rather than have to push your way around and push your energies out, rather than, find the power in your energies of aligning your energies, especially with those around you. So hence the importance of doing this in group. And in the group, if anybody's wondering, it's very open. You don't have to talk. You talk as much or as little as you choose. You participate as much or as little as you choose. I trust that the energy itself transforms people inside of it and shifts them and expands them, enlightens them in what they're looking at. So whether they speak or not, it's up to the individual. That being said, those who participate get a lot more out of it, right? But even the person who participates the least, I don't think I've ever had a seminar anybody left disappointed or anything like that. So, just so people feel safe, that feel a little scared or a little nervous in group, it's a whole nother lesson and a whole nother way of how to feel support and the safety that a group offers, a real safety that a group offers, the open space to express yourself and be accepted. That's real safety, not whether anyone's going to break into your house or not. We're not talking about that kind of safety. This group does offer that. And I set all my groups up that way. People can talk as much or as little. Our open forum group that you're speaking of. as you know, we talk about anything and everything. Right? And that's one of the advantages I know I bring to a situation because of my various experiences. I could speak upon just about anything. And it adds comfort to everyone to be able to go and bring anything up. Yeah.
Absolutely. Which makes me think just about my own journey on these calls. If you remember in the beginning, I didn't choose to speak at all. I was more there to just observe and take note. But over time, and I feel like the group calls over the last 8 months and what I'm kind of sensing into the seminar, which this will be my first seminar with you as well. I feel like the experience that I'm anticipating is almost like a micro condensed 3-day version of the last 8 months. And I'm so incredibly excited to experience that. So I recommend everyone to tune into this and see if it feels right, given what we've talked about. And so the seminar is coming up, like I said, April 20th to the 22nd. So it's the evening of the Friday, full day Saturday, and full day Sunday. And I just lastly want to speak a little bit to the benefit of self-investment. So a lot of us still have a mindset of scarcity, especially in these economics these days. And a friend of mine who's actually part of the IM community said to me something along the lines of, the money that you put into self-investment will amplify to a degree of abundance that you won't even understand in the moment that it's happening. And so I personally have made self-investment in my own growth and my own healing a tremendous priority. And I'm starting to see the abundance just flowing in. And this is coming in abundance of prosperity, but also in love, in self-acceptance. And so I just wanted to put that out there, because I know I've previously looked at seminars and the cost of the seminars too, and been like, I can't afford that. And, you know, I could be using that money for other things, but those other things tended to be external things that had no impact on my own personal growth and my own personal healing. And so I just wanted to put that out there for anyone who can resonate with that. And just from personal experience, I know it's going to be 100% worth it.
Well, you know, if I could speak, as you mentioned scarcity earlier, and I'd like to speak to that. I've not been the greatest salesperson to my own work. I'm too busy doing my own work and producing it. But, you know, I do have to be fair to all those that have come before you, who have reached out to me over the years, old students telling me the stuff I taught them in the 90s, how it's still affecting their lives today. And so I know what I provide and give gives people things that last long periods of time. There's lots of seeds that, you know, will sprout a year or two down the road. So in terms of getting your money's worth, I charge very little actually for these seminars for what people get. I'm clear on that. It's okay. I work with what I need. But the concept, and so, you know, I have to say that it's more than worth it in that respect. I never doubt the value, and I never concern myself with the value people are getting from it. One's own personal fear of providing for oneself, this concept of scared city, you know, I was raised in New York City during the 70s, which was one of the highest crime rates and murder rates and poverty that New York had experienced since the earlier years of that city. And so talk about living in a scared city. And so I came to understand scarcity in many ways, and the most amazing creative ways in which we lived through that decade. And the artistic abundance we created with very little, that I understood there's no need to be scared or live in that kind of fashion. This fear of not enough, or not having enough, obviously I can say it in words. You've heard it 1,000 times, some of you. It just speaks to this idea that whatever's created things is cheap. And because and I know you're so special. I know each of us is so special that this thing that created everything is going to pick you out and not give you, but give everyone else. And you got to make sure you be careful what you do with what you have. You can see the egocentric fashion that scarcity relies on. Scarcity relies on a very egocentric psychology. You remove that and scarcity won't grow much. You want to understand that any investment in yourself, seriously, it's in yourself, can only blossom tenfold, because again, if you can give it and do it with yourself and understand these parts of yourself and more of yourself, then you've got that much more to give another, and another believing you. Right? So this is not about giving knowledge and education of the right words to speak. This is something that you want to be able to nourish yourself with experiences and pay for things that give you an experience. So I was going to say, take this seminar or another. I would say take one that's providing you great experience, not strictly knowledge. Because you need the knowledge, yes, to have the experience, to have the awakening and the wisdom that comes from it. I understand that. But straight to the experience bypasses a lot of this. And if you're going to provide yourself an experience, filling yourself with knowledge and experience, then how is that at any point in time a loss or a waste for yourselves? It's incomprehensible to me today, highly comprehensible to me when I used to live in scarcity. When I really thought life picked me out and said, you get, but you don't get. And I'm, a cruel thing. I'm a cruel power, and I'm going to just take it away from you randomly. And so I would live like, what if they took it away from me tomorrow? Oh, maybe I don't want to spend this. And then I would get so frustrated and felt so dominated by that I'd say, fuck this. I'm just going to buy myself a $500 shirt and say, so what? I have it. And I just go to these extremes, all based on scarcity. So I wound up fulfilling the scarcity from this push and pull of this belief that I live in a world that doesn't want to take care of me, and that doesn't actually take care of everything that I see, look around me. And all this evidence in my own life and in others, still, I get it. The doubts were still there, and it can still pop up. But it's silly and it's not true. I know when the sun goes down at night, it doesn't go any fucking place. I know the sun is there. I've just moved away from it, me and the rest of us in this side of the hemisphere. It's still there. And life shows me enough times that love and our needs being filled and what we call abundance is always there. It's just we move away from it or towards it. And so, this is a movement towards it. If you do or do not get involved in this, you're welcome to join us on Tuesdays. It's completely open and free for anyone, so that we can continue to grow this consciousness and community. So I appreciate greatly you, Tina, joining and grouping together. The more the merrier. So it's for those, and for those who feel like they want to give themselves something more, and like I said, a real pillar of life, one of the major columns, which is understanding our death and darkness, then this cannot be. There's no such thing as a bad investment in that way, because again, what grows you grows your life, and this is this is the concept that you want to be able to contrast to, this concept of scarcity. There is no scarcity without being scared, without fear, and this is again really bizarre to me now, and so commonsensical for me 30, 40 years ago. So I appreciate it. I understand it. I feel for you. It's not true. It isn't. I always recommend, as you put it, you can use the word investment. It really isn't about money. Again, it's about growing yourself. So do understand that any kind of thing, I'm not even talking about the seminars anymore. I just, I'd rather speak about these things that we can provide ourselves. We much better buy a drink or spend it on frivolously than to give to ourselves. And that doesn't bring you return, right? Yeah, this is for you, for yourselves. So if you want to give this to yourselves, absolutely, it's available. And I make it, like I said, affordable. For what I know the going rates are out there for things of this nature.
100%. Joseph, I feel like we just had a mini session all combined in one in this conversation. I so appreciate your wisdom and your teaching and being so open to sharing also.
Oh, my pleasure. I mean, I'm sorry I didn't bring any of the raw humor and raunchiness like I sometimes bring, but if you join, definitely you'll get that in the seminar.
Brace yourself, people. Amazing, Joseph. So I will be sharing more of the details with the links for registration and information with the Live It Up community and beyond, of course. Is there anything else you want to say? I feel like we've covered a lot, but
yeah, no, thank you to yourself and to the Live It Up community, and yeah, this is fun. I love I love my life because I love what I do, and I get to do this, and I get to do it with wonderful people like you. So I'm grateful completely in return. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph, and thank you everyone for watching. Stay tuned for more information on the Darkness Seminar with Joseph Maldonado. And thank you so much for taking the time to listening and feeling into this conversation. Much love.